Welcome to Life Burst. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Matt. Well, can an engineer believe in miracles? Find out soon.
Yes, welcome to Life Burst. I am Sarah.
And I'm Matt. It is wonderful you could join us again as we delve into stories of ordinary, everyday people like this guy. Ken, welcome into the studio. It is really good to have you in. We're looking forward to what you have to share today as we walk through your life. Where did life start out for you?
Well, for me, it started in England, and I went to school, started school there, and then came out to Australia when I was 7 years old. We were 10-pound poms, so it's my brother and I and parents. And as it would happen, we were left in Adelaide. We could have gone to Perth or Sydney or whatever, but we ended up in Adelaide, and that's probably a good thing. I went to several schools in Adelaide. In fact, I went to a total of 12 schools over my education period, and we moved around quite a bit when we first came here. We ended up out at Elizabeth, and so we spent a reasonable amount of time there. And then I went to Elizabeth High School. I got a scholarship, so I went to university to do a bachelor's degree in electronics, and became an engineer. And I ended up being probably one of the youngest engineers to graduate from Adelaide Uni. So I was an engineer at 19, and I went over to Melbourne to work in design and research, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And in my last year, I met my wife Anne, and being over in Melbourne, her being in Adelaide was not the best arrangements. And
So how did you two meet each other then? Can't skip over this.
Okay, well, we actually met when I first came out to Australia, and I started off at the Henley Beach Primary School, and she happened to be in the same class as I. And in fact, at being a pom, I was still learning, how to kick a football and that sort of thing. But somehow, somewhere along the line, I got roped into a kiss chasey. And
How cute.
and believe it or not, my wife-to-be, I actually caught her and she went all giggly. And but then we moved on. So and it wasn't until very much later that it was the end of my second year at uni, and my mate and I, we decided that we'd have a bit of a party and whatnot, but I didn't have a girlfriend. And so he rang around and said, I think I've got a date for you. So I met this young lady as a blind date. She didn't realise I was English. In fact, she thought that I could have been Chinese or something like that, because a name like Ken Lynn could. So she got a bit of a surprise when I turned up. And she wasn't going to accept that at all, but she'd actually bought a new dress, so she wanted to, try out the new dress. So you can see it was sort of quite an unusual sort of situation to actually meet her again. And I must say that we hit it off very well on that first date, and much to the surprise of our friends.
Right.
So that's how it started.
Started with kiss chasey.
A long time before, and obviously still lingered.
Yes.
How did you know that you were playing Kiss Chasey all these years later? How did you know that was the thing, that you played that game together?
Oh, well, because I remembered it very clearly. It was the first time I'd actually held a girl, and I couldn't believe how soft they were.
Oh, right. Yes.
I mean,
We're soft, ladies.
yeah, it's sort of. So I remembered it quite clearly. It was the only time I actually played Kiss Chasey. I thought that was sort of, that wasn't really for boys. And I
Did
went
you
out.
kiss her in Kiss Chasey?
No, we didn't get to that. So anyway, she was wriggling around too much.
But he touched. Yeah. Anyway, this is a good story. Do you have back in those childhood years, did you have memories of England, or had you already moved? What age were you?
Well, I actually turned 8 shortly after we arrived here in Australia. But I had very clear memories of England. And in fact, when we went back to England in 2000, I could actually describe where I lived, where the streets were, what the school looked like, and so on. And so, yeah, very clear memories. And it was really quite interesting to see how much smaller everything was. I think most people have that experience, go back to where they were when they were a kid. And the main street was shorter, and all the rest of it, the shops were smaller. But yes, I remembered quite a bit. In fact, much to my wife's frustration, I can remember a lot of things, even when I was a little tacker. It's just one of those things that I'm able to do. Whereas she can't remember very much at all.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, you said you came over and you had the strong English accent. How did you come into being within sort of the Australian culture that was around at the time? How did you lose that accent?
Well, I didn't actually completely lose it.
Oh no, you've definitely still got some of
Yes,
it. But
that's
yeah.
right. I guess it, just growing up and going to different schools, there was obviously a big migrant population in Elizabeth. I used to be able to mimic people's accents. I was one of my part-time jobs while I was at high school was to go around and collect money for the paper round, and someone would answer the door and they would have an Irish accent, and so I put on my Irish lilt, or it could be a sort of an Italian type accent, so I sort of mimic that and so on. So in many ways, I guess that I've been a bit of a mimic if I really put my mind to it. And so perhaps acquiring an Australian accent wasn't that hard. And and also we were known as Poms, and that was quite a derisory sort of label that they put on us. But I mean, as a kid, you just put up with that and just laughed at it. But you actually learn to try and avoid, standing out from the crowd. When I came out from England, boys had shorts down to their knees. We had what we called satchels, and not the kit bags that the boys usually had in those days. So you had to sort of discard all that sort of paraphernalia and start to get in with what the other boys were doing.
What, did you get bullied or anything like that because of your different accent and where you came from?
No, not really. I think that I was more curiosity than anything. So occasionally I got bullied, but I learned in England how to stand up to bullies, so I never really sort of tolerated that very much. And so people learned that no, you don't really do that to Ken then.
Okay.
Eventually.
Fighting words.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, there's a lot more to share of your story, so we look forward to more of that right after this. This is Life Burst with Matt and Sarah.
Welcome back to Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. Today we're chatting with Ken, and he's about to tell us about some of the mischievous things that he got up to with his brother.
Yes.
Yeah. May or may not have landed you in,
Yes,
hot water.
Yes, my brother has landed me in hot water, as he normally does. And it's been the story of our sibling rivalry for many, many years. it's a bit hard to know where to start because I guess there are so many incidences. One stage, it was a Guy Fawkes night, November the 5th, which of course has been cancelled because
What is Guy Fawkes for people who don't know what that is?
Guy Fawkes, he was an English gentleman who decided that he'd had enough of politicians and wanted to blow up Parliament, and he had the gunpowder plot, but he got caught, unfortunately, and so we're stuck with our politicians still to this day. And in commemoration of his attempt, every year on the 5th of November, there'd be bonfires, and there would be what's called the Guy, which was, jackets and old trousers and whatnot, stuffed with straws, and the poor chap was put on top of the bonfire, and we'd have
You're obviously
fireworks.
talking about a scarecrow, right?
A scarecrow.
Just wanted
He
to
was
make
long gone.
sure. Just making sure people didn't think that like I was a real guy and stuffed with straw
real
and put on
guy.
top of a bonfire.
Yeah, we didn't push straw into a real guy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make that clear.
Yes, his name was Guy. He wasn't a male as such, but we decided that a group of us, including my brother, decided to get up to a little bit of skullduggery. We had our fireworks, we had our bangers, our crackers, whatever, and we were wandering around the streets of Elizabeth at night and lighting these things and letting them off. Probably one of the highlights of the night for me was some person who obviously enjoyed Guy Fawkes had left a tin rubbish bin right down on the pavement, an empty one, and looked practically new. And I think they'd placed that there just for little fellas like us. And so I picked the biggest banger I could, lit it, and put the lid on, and we all scarpered. My brother was a little bit slower off the take, and so I'd run a reasonable distance, and so we all sort of turned with anticipation, and this thing went off. And the lid of the dustbin went extraordinarily high. It must have gone up to about 30 feet. My brother had stopped, lost sight of the lid, and I could see this thing gradually floating towards him. And I was trying to get out a warning, but it just didn't come. And believe it or not, he'd stepped right into the place of this lid. Came down and hit him on it. Now, whether that, scattered his brain a little bit more than normal, I'm not quite sure. But,
Watch this.
but anyway, I think it might have been my suggestion, but I would cheerfully put the blame on him as well. As we were sort of exhausting our fireworks, we were going past our house, and our letterbox was now to the top of the post of the fence. Mm-hmm. And there was a particularly nasty spider inside of this thing. So I thought it was a really sort of cunning plan to actually put a bang inside this.
So it was your idea?
Yeah, well, I might not have come up with the suggestion, but I certainly came up with the way to implement it. And so Julie sort of lit this thing, put it in, and actually locked the lid of the letterbox to make sure the explosion would really get rid of this spider. Well, yes, it went off. It got rid of the spider, but it lifted most of the letterbox off the post and just left the metal bit nailed to the top of the. It made an enormous noise, and my father obviously was pretty close to the door because he raced out because we were sort of a bit open mouthed, like, "Oh my goodness me, that wasn't supposed to happen." And he saw the smoke enshrouded shreds of the letterbox, and he said, "Who did this?" And I said, "They went that way." And anyway, my father really didn't believe me, but my mother said, "Oh, our boys wouldn't do something like that." And we said, "No, we wouldn't." I guess the things explosive had always been sort of in our family, and while I was at uni, I'd learned to make a very good smoke bomb, and including the fuse. You could get the ingredients in those days. And I was my brother and I were actually driving through my Standard 8, which was a fairly dilapidated, small little car with an 8 horsepower motor, so you can see it's sort of a pretty racy machine. And my brother was with me, and he wanted to light one of these smoke bombs that I had, and we were going along Norwood Parade. And he said, "Can I do it?" Yeah. I said, "Well, if you do, you've got to drop it through the floor because there's a big rusty hole in the bottom of on the passenger side."
As there is.
Yeah, well, that's right. And so he, with great glee, he lit this thing and dropped it through the floor. So it looked like we were completely innocent. And it was a magnificent bomb. It actually filled Norwood Parade, and I could see the cars having to slow down and come out of this white smoke. And of course, we sort of roared off at great speed in our little Standard 8, laughing our heads off. Yes, so my brother managed to get me into all sorts of strife.
Your brother, yes.
Yeah, it's your brother.
Yeah, that's right.
So kids, don't try these things at home. These were different times.
Very different
They
time.
were different
But
times.
typical of some of the things that you got up to in those days, alongside all the serious business of study.
Yes, yes, it was the serious part of study. I was never really a really good student because I was actually quite young. I matriculated in what was year 11, so I started uni when I was 16. I was very naive. I had no idea how to take lecture notes or anything. And however, I actually managed to complete the degree in the time allotted, which was quite rare. But each year I had to have do a supplementary exam, and which I always managed to excel because I only had one to study for. So in many ways that was an asset. But I managed to get through, and yeah, and as I said, graduated when I was 19. Did my bit of an engineering in Melbourne, and here also in Adelaide. I was with the Pipelines Authority for a couple of years.
What does that involve?
Well, the pipeline, it sounds like you just pushing gas down a pipeline from Moomba down to Adelaide. But there's a lot of electronics and communications associated with it. So they need an electronic engineer. And I was the only electronic engineer there. So, yes, so that involved, as I said, RF communications, instrumentation, computers, and all sorts of things. So, it was quite involved.
And you enjoyed that? That was something, after having studied all these years, it was a way to put that into use, or was your brain always ticking for the next thing?
My brain is always ticking. In fact, it's probably one of my burdens I have to bear. I probably didn't enjoy that as much. I much further enjoyed the research and development thing that I did in Melbourne, where you really sort of designing things from scratch. And so, as I said, I really didn't enjoy that. But then there came an opportunity to get a lecturer's position at TAFE at Kilkenny, and so I actually got interested in that, applied for that, and actually got in there. And ended up again being one of the youngest lecturers ever to be in TAFE. Yeah, so that's really where my academic side took off. I did further studies and whatever. I always aspired to perhaps go on and do a PhD, but never got around to it. I think having a large family, five children, and 10 acres of land and animals to look after sort of precluded that sort of activity. Yeah.
Well, we will be back with more of Ken's story straight after this on Life Bursts with Matt and Sarah. Welcome back to Life Bursts with Matt and Sarah. Today we're chatting with Ken. And Ken, I would like to know why you liked electronic engineering so much.
Yes, that's not a bad question. I think at this stage, I'm glad you asked that question. Yes. When I was 12 years old, next door neighbour, he was a electronic technician working out at what was known then as the Weapons Research Establishment, and he was a ham operator. And he decided that he would start a small radio club for the local lads. And so me and a few other friends went round there on the weekend, and he would show us, his equipment and the components and so on. I also had a friend at high school who was interested in electronics, very sort of low-level stuff. The first thing I made was what is called a crystal set, which is a very simple passive receiver, and you use earphones, and you can actually pick up the normal AM broadcast. And then I made myself a receiver, which used valves in those days. The transistor hadn't come on the scene. And so out of that, when I received my scholarship, I sort of asked, well, what do you want to do? And this next door neighbour, he said, well, obviously you want to do engineering. I thought, well, yes, that's a good idea. And so that's really where it started. So my choice was sort of really made when I was 12 years old. Got an interest in electronics, and I got used to the idea of soldering components together. Things electrical fascinated me. I'm sure that my brother can tell a story of how I got him to hold on to a couple of leads, and he got a slight electric shock.
Where do these things end for you two?
It's
You
amazing.
just electrocuted your brother. That's fine.
No, he didn't actually die. It was just an electric shock.
All in the name of science.
I would have got into real trouble with my mother if I'd have done that.
So it sounds like everything is very like science based. Like you were very scientific with how you made the radio or how you did the bombs or how like everything that you did. It was very science based.
Yeah, I guess it was. I always did very well at physics and chemistry, and I enjoyed maths. Believe it or not, I actually enjoyed English, and I did not enjoy Latin and French. They were not my strong suit at all. But yes, I guess that's been my natural inclination.
So everything very scientific.
Scientific. Some things that if something works, it's always fascinating to pull it apart and find out why it works, and then have the challenge to put it back again and have it still work.
Does that annoy your wife?
I'm not sure. I think she's just got used to it. However, she does find it useful that Ken, this isn't working, and I go, oh, goody, something else to fix.
Yes. Yeah.
She has come to the conclusion that I do actually like taking things which are old and dilapidated and renovating them, making them work and making them look good. That's something that gives me a certain amount of satisfaction. So, stick around, Matt.
Yeah. So you've touched on meeting your wife and the property you have, but somewhere along the line, with all of that, the scientific background that you had, you're an engineer. Something happened that perhaps shook that up a bit for you.
Yes, it certainly did. When I first started as a lecturer, I started off with 140 students, and so someone who's new to an academic area and having that number of students, obviously that was a fairly heavy load. And I came down with glandular fever, and it was quite bad. And my wife used to come and pick me up from our flat and drive me to the college. I would sit down at the front, give my lecture, and then she would throw me in the car and take me back again. So, to recuperate, it took me quite a while. It took me about 4 weeks. But while I was there, laying in bed, you had a lot of time to think. And I said that there's really got to be more to it than this. And I knew of one colleague who was into Hinduism, and I thought, okay, when I get back, I'll actually ask him about this, because I needed to get a deeper answer to what life was all about, and where it was going, and I guess that's part of my natural curiosity as well.
But wasn't science enough? Like you knew how
No,
everything worked and
no, science and definitely was not enough, and I could actually, even then, I was quite disappointed with how society behaved. It seemed like we could make lots of advantages, advances in technology, but in terms of getting along with one another, we were doing a pretty miserable job. And that was when the Vietnam War was on, and so on, and things looked pretty grim. We'd just come out of, the Cold War and the threat of nuclear war and so on. So um, there was a lot of things wrong with the world that were quite obvious then. There are now, of course, but so when I got back, I said, I asked him. I said, "Tell me about this Hindu stuff." And so he talked a bit about the Bhagavad Gita and the different gods and whatnot. And then he said, "But you don't want to know about that. You want to know about Jesus Christ."
Oh.
And I thought, okay, do I? Because I'd actually had arguments with this guy. He'd become a Christian, and I was very anti-Christian, and so we'd have verbal fisticuffs. But for once, I actually listened to him, and as I listened to him, I knew deep in myself that I was listening to the truth of who this person, this Jesus, was. And so we had very long conversations, and eventually, it gradually grew to the point where, yeah, I want to follow this Jesus character. So
do you remember any of the questions that you asked?
to tell you the truth, no. In fact, he was a great talker. Um, and so, once you got him started, you could hardly get him to stop. I have been accused of that myself, but I'm sure that's wrong. But yeah, I actually woke up, or well, I thought I woke up one night, and there was a figure at the bottom of the bed, and it was quite an elaborate robe that this figure had. I couldn't see the face, and when I saw it, I was absolutely terrified. And this figure then said, "Ken, keep coming on the straight road." And as soon as he spoke that, an incredible peace went through me. And
Are you talking about like a physical person was in your house?
it felt like a physical person.
But it wasn't.
No,
Okay.
because I thought I was awake, but then I woke up, and I was going to wake my wife up and say, "Hey, guess what happened?" And because I'd been telling her about the conversations I've been having, and I thought, no, she'll think I'm nuts. So this happened on a Friday night, and on Monday, when I turned up to work, I met this mate of mine, and I told him what happened, and his jaw dropped. He'd just been speaking to another Christian, and apparently both of them had been praying for me that Friday, and both of them felt this incredible peace at 11:15.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, this is more than coincidence. I started the journey with this person called Jesus, who was lived 2,000 years ago, and it's been an ongoing adventure ever since.
We'll be back to hear about this ongoing adventure straight after this here on Life Bus with Matt and Sarah.
Thank you for joining us on Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. We're hearing Ken's story as Ken's talked about being an engineer and coming to the point where you went through a moment where science wasn't providing the answers, and through some questions you began a an adventure with Jesus, you described it. What did that look like? What changed for you in that initial moment?
Well, I guess it for me, um, it opened up a completely new world that I didn't realize existed. Um, it opened up uh, what happens in the spiritual realm, what happens in the soul, and in fact that there is an answer to the problems that the world had, the things that had sort of always troubled me. And the more I read um, about Jesus, the more I realized that he did have the answers. We just simply have to be able to pick those up, run with them, and implement them, and we'd have a very different world.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
that's huge. Okay, right. That's a big change from science-based to now this
Yes, it
guy who
was.
lived like 2,000 years ago based.
So I imagine you just carried on as usual.
Yeah.
How could one? How
Yeah.
could one when we went through such a dramatic change? And I actually said to my wife, I said, I think I need to get baptized. And she said, well, can we wait until the baby is born? Because she was well and truly pregnant by then, and we'll get baptized together. And so that was a
Aw.
great moment. So as a family, we were starting out as a Christian family.
Mm.
Um, the friend that I actually had that actually introduced me to Jesus, he and his wife and another Christian sort of a folk musician had started a band called Country Gospel Bluegrass Band.
Mm.
And we'd actually having tea with them as a group, and the two of them saying, gee, I wish we had a bass player. And so I said, oh, how hard is it to learn bass?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and their eyes lit up. You could see the sort of glint in their eyes. Great, we have someone. So for the next 2 months, I'd get up first thing in the morning with my very cheap short bass guitar and our homemade bass amplifier, and I'd practice each morning and each night. And so after 2 months, I actually found myself on stage for the first time, playing along with a bluegrass band. And as is typical with your first performance, I had no idea what I was doing. And I get these strange looks like, what chord are you playing? I have no idea. But having sort of mastered that and been forgiven for botching it up, I was with that group for 7 years. We had various members that came and left. And we were in very much demand. In fact, we actually had to book times where we'd have a break because otherwise we would be booked every weekend, a couple of times each weekend. And we would also practice every week. So it was very popular. It sounds a bit lame now these days, listening to it, but in those days it was like, wow, this is so new and so different. We played at big venues. We played at the Festival Theatre and the Adelaide Town Hall, and a big evangelism event. So we actually made a record, an LP, which of course are now coming back into fashion. So I might get some more pressings of that and sort of go into business. So we made we sold a lot of those, so it was really sort of quite popular, and we did tours into the country and so on. But what that really did is expose me to so many different denominations, because we went from Church of England to Pentecostals to Brethren to Methodists and Uniting Church. Well, it wasn't Uniting Church in those days, but Baptist, so on. And even I think that we went to one Roman Catholic gig where it was a very upbeat Roman Catholic priest. So I was exposed to a broad range of different doctrines, and So I wasn't sort of cast in a particular mold, I guess. We started off at a Lutheran church. We've been to several different denominations since then for our own, worship time, church time. But and I guess that sort of opened me up to the possibilities of that anything could happen. That I needn't be constrained in my thinking because all denominations have things that are right and things that are not so right. And because I was always interested in the truth, and with this scientific engineering mind of mine, I was always interested in actually finding out what the real truth was. One of the things that actually happened for me was I learned something about prayer that took it to a spiritual level. And it's the first time I'd actually heard of this. This is when we were going to a Brethren church and this little book was introduced to me. And that was quite an eye-opener. And so I started to delve into, the spiritual stuff and spiritual prayer and that sort of thing. And then I heard that there was a preacher from Africa visiting Adelaide who had a healing ministry. And so I said to Anne, okay, I'll go down. I'll just go down for the morning. He was there for, I think, 4 days. I'll just go down for the morning and see what it's like. Well, that's the first time I actually saw a miracle actually in front of my eyes. And this lady who was deaf in one ear, people had prayed for her and, nothing had happened. And he said, that's all right, don't worry about it. And right there, he commanded the, her hearing to come back and told her to cover her good ear. And he just repeated phases as he went further and further back down the hall, and she could repeat it as he went. So her hearing was literally healed then and there.
And who healed it?
He healed her. Who healed it?
Yeah, who healed it?
I'm just trying to remember his name. I can't remember his name. But he actually, yes, are you saying who healed it?
Who healed it? Yeah, not the man, because
okay.
From what you've just said, it obviously was not the man from Africa that healed it. He was obviously an instrument to be used.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, you actually wanted me to say that it was Jesus that healed, and obviously that is absolutely correct. And so, but the long and short of it all was that I actually went back to him and I said, this guy's for real. You need to come down as well. And this preacher, he gave full credit to Jesus and what he has done for us. And so healing, these miracles, they're for real. I then actually took my mother and father on the last night to see him. And my mother had a nasty fall. She'd been in a wheelchair. She'd had an injured hip, and she was sitting next to me, and he was just giving his message. And she dug me in the ribs and said, Ken, I said, what's the matter? I'm healed. I said, what do you mean? My leg just moved, it's healed. I said, really? That's great. But he hasn't prayed yet. And sure enough, she was healed, just sitting there listening to this guy and him talking about the love of God and what Jesus has done for us. So I was convinced. I was convinced that healing through the name of Jesus is for real.
So I bet you wanted to go out and start doing that on other people, didn't you?
That's right.
Yeah. So I thought this was going. So we'll be back to find out if he actually and how that happened straight after this on Life Verse with Matt and Sarah. Welcome back to Life Verse with Matt and Sarah. Today we're chatting with Ken. And with the final parts of the show, you've just said that you then wanted to go around healing people and doing miracles in Jesus' name. So how did you deal with the skeptics of that, of you saying that and then doing that?
Well, I guess it skeptics are sort of either obviously just disbelieving, but there's some are also quite fearful. I think that in many ways, it's not that we went out to try and convince people from a logical point of view. It was when they see the results in front of them, it's pretty hard to discount it. And so really didn't sort of get too many negatives. I got a lot of resistance to actually starting a healing ministry in the church, and I proposed it for quite a few months, and the resistance actually came from the pastors.
Wow. Okay.
Oh,
Because did I dot the I's and cross the T's and all the rest of it? And you have to remember this was a Lutheran church. Say no more.
so you were trying to do as what Jesus did and went around and like healed people and did miracles, and the minister was saying nah, even though that's like the whole
Well, they
point
didn't
of
say no as such, but they've always found reasons not to
yeah, okay.
say yes. I actually had prepared quite a lengthy range of documents to sort of say, okay, this is what it would look like, this is how it would work, this is how people would be trained, and so on. So I put a lot of thought into it, and they complained about trivial things. Oh, you've done this, or you've done that, and no, we haven't decided yet, and so on. But finally, they decided to let me off the leash, and we were asked. My wife and I were asked to join a group of Lutherans who learned to speak in tongues, and because they felt that we might be able to give them a bit of guidance or whatever. And out of that group, once that group realized it wasn't about tongues or anything else, it was really, everything about Jesus is miraculous. You don't have to sort of concentrate in one area. And so we started to pray deeply about our own liabilities and faults and whatever. And so slowly but surely, we actually, as a group, developed into this time, this sort of group that knew one another, had a level of trust with one another, and finally the pastor say, "Okay, yes, you can do it," and so we were launched from there. And God was really great. The Holy Spirit was so careful to teach us about things.
I have to ask, when you were healing people, is this like rolling around on the ground, screaming and shaking thing, or
No, well, yeah, generally no.
okay?
That's sort of that's what I call a circus performance. And I personally don't like that at all, and I don't think that's not necessary. So generally people sort of just receive prayer, receiving teaching, and are healed. Probably one of the more dramatic times was a lady who had Crohn's disease, which is a very serious disease,
Yes.
and it was progressing. And there was someone else with me, and it was like, yes, pray for her now. So we started praying for her, and she actually started to feel quite weak. And she said, I've got to lay down. We actually started praying for different parts of her body.
So what would you say when you were praying for that particular person?
Well, okay, if we spotted for example, there was a problem with the liver, okay, and it was something the Holy Spirit showed us,
Yeah.
and so we say, okay, in the name of Jesus Christ, we command you to be healed, and whatever, to leave her, and she would actually feel things actually happening inside her body, and so we'd sort of worked through various parts of her body, including obviously her intestinal gut lining and
Yeah.
whatnot. And she felt, quite sort of dazed by the time of it, but she felt fine. And she went to the doctor that week, and he said, I don't know what you've been doing, but you you're healed.
Wow.
Whoa. I was going to ask, like, if you had any medical proof or shown to the doctor or something,
Yeah,
but
it was.
it actually had gone.
It had actually gone,
She did not have
completely gone.
Crohn's.
It was healed. Actually, a few months later, I was actually talking to one of the pastors, and she knocked on the door and came in, and she looked very, very worried. She said, "The symptoms are starting to come back again." And I said, "Well, that's easy. We can affirm what has actually happened." And I said, "It's okay if I put my hand on your tummy and pray for it?" She said, "Oh, yeah, okay." And so the pastor was there, and we prayed for her. I said, "There you are, it's all fixed." And she said, "Yes, it was."
Wow.
Um, and so the symptoms disappeared. Whether the symptoms actually were, because there had been a recurrence, or whether it was just, something in the mind, or we don't know.
Now, I'm curious, what would you say to people watching this if they're like they've got something going on with them and they want to test out what you're saying? What would you say to them?
Well, I think that first of all, you have to understand what Jesus went through for us. Um, a lot of the depictions were sort of pretty mild. This man was he was brutally whipped to the point where flesh was torn off his back. He was, that crown of thorns, you just get one thorn in you and it hurts like crazy. Imagine the thorns being put on your head and then being hit over the head. And those thorns being driven through your skin into, and scraping across the top of your skull. Let alone the nails going through parts of the body where they're just so, the nerves are so packed together, the pain would be excruciating, and then just hanging there. And it's quite clear, the Bible says, we are healed by his stripes. And the biggest problem for people is to accept that Jesus wants to heal them, and people come up with all sorts of reasons why. No, I'm not good enough, or no, I can handle it. It's okay, and these sorts of things. And for some reason, they push away from these sorts of things. Sometimes people aren't healed straight away, and sometimes there's prayer and healing comes later. Why? We don't know. Each person is different, and so each person's experience is different. But there is a reality that Jesus has done everything that's needed for us to speak healing into people, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's psychological or spiritual. He's done everything.
So what should they say?
Help. Jesus, please help. And be open to the fact that he loves them, that he's not mad at them, he wants to heal them, and that he will guide them into a place and a time where the healing will be complete.
And Ken, I guess just to clarify, you say this not as something you've read in the book, but you've seen, and you've given one example, but many times where this has been lived out and you've seen it happen in your life.
Yes.
And those around you today. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it over and over again, and it's really it's no power within myself. It's no okay, I might have degrees or whatever. That has nothing to do with it. It is the fact that if a person is open to the Holy Spirit working through them to bring healing to people, then they'll bring healing to people. I mean, that's available to people who want. People have to ask Jesus to be healed.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
the
good.
live story. It's certainly. We started off with a question: can an engineer believe in miracles? And you've seen the surface, but I love how your story has come and brought you to that point and seen that happen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken, for being so open and sharing with all of us today about your life story.
Good.
Really
Pleasure.
appreciate it. You can catch up with Life Bursts wherever you listen to your podcasts and on Facebook, YouTube, and TV and radio as well. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Life Bursts is hosted by Matthew Karat and Sarah Freeman, with production by Reese Jarrett and Kay Hoshraw Ozadigan. For more episodes of Life Bursts, go to rawcut.com.au. This is a RawCut production.